Good afternoon and welcome to TalkSports. It's our weekend sports program where we speak with the movers and shakers of sports, the sportsmen, sportswomen, administrators, coaches, tubagai, whoever they are. Well, it is a promise and a promise delivered. We spoke highly and for quite a while. We have been speaking about, probably the last year or two, we have been reporting about the exploits of student athletes from around the Caribbean, and we have been following ISSA Grace Kennedy Boys and Girls Athletics Championship, giving you the results, everything, and have been a lot of discussions over the past few months, in particular, about the performances of those student athletes over in Jamaica, especially those from the Sister Isle of Carriacou in particular. And then we have seen those from St. Vincent, Trinidad, and we even seen some athletes from as far as Africa also heading to Jamaica. So it appears that Jamaica is ground zero for junior track and field, not just for the region, but it seems to be a global brand now. We have with us the president of ISSA Jamaica, and Mr. Keith Wellington, who, by the way, is also the principal of St. Elizabeth Technical School, and he will be joining us momentarily, but he's on already to speak all about the program, right? And some of the questions you'll be asking regarding the ISSA Championship. Remember, too, that ISSA, Intersecondary Schools, Sports Association, it's not just track and field, If you go on the website, the Facebook page is, football, cricket, sports in general, high school sports. Obviously, the track and field has been the dominant factor for ISSA because it brings that sort of global attention, not just the regional attention, but global attention. I recall a few years ago traveling with then IWF media team, and we head to the National Stadium in Kingston for the Boys and Girls Champs over the past week. And, the global media attention, we met folks from CBS, quite a few American journalists, and there were a few from Canada as well. Yeah, I recall that. We spoke to some of them. So it's becoming now a global brand. So Mr. Keith Wellington is joining us to speak about the ISSA Grace Kennedy Athletics Championship in one breath, and then he will also be speaking about the entire program, what it really means. There have been discussions of whether or not that has been taken away from the talent pool of Jamaicans, and seeing as so many of these non-Jamaicans, as we'll say, or for what better word, foreign athletes are now heading to Jamaica. Whether this will be the new attention, instead of going to North America, they're going to Jamaica. Let me welcome Mr. Keith Wellington, as well as my co-host, Rudy and Sylvan in Toronto. First of all, let me welcome Mr. Wellington. Good afternoon to you, Mr. Wellington.
Hey, Michael. Good afternoon. Good afternoon to Rudy as well. Good afternoon to your viewers.
Right. I know for Rudy and myself, it's we a bit cold, and you see the color. I'm trying to bring some sunshine, but I'm trying to bring some sunshine. Rudy is wearing his hat.
I'm trying. It's freezing. It's freezing. Yeah. It's almost minus 30. It's freezing with snow. Cause we have it now coming down, so it's not fun.
What it is like in your area in St. Elizabeth, Mr. Wellington?
Well, I'm in Santa Cruz, and Santa Cruz is reputed to be probably the hottest place in Jamaica. So I know everybody knows what the Jamaican weather is typically like. If I'm at the extreme end, then you can well imagine. But it hasn't been all that bad over the last few weeks. The temperatures are not as high as they normally are, but I'm sure you'd be happy to have half probably closer to 90, and if you get 45, you'd be happy.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wellington, for accepting our invite to be part of the program to speak. Because, as indicated, we have been discussing quite a bit over the past few months, in particular, about the exploits of these student athletes from the Caribbean, outside of the Jamaican context. And certainly, it has been an eye for other, parents in particular, who been hearing about these student athletes, because I can tell you probably 5-10 years ago, that may not be the case. It would not have been the case, um, um, except probably they're going to UE, Mona, GC Foster, for example. I know of some of our coaches who have been trained at GC Foster. We had an athlete, Hazelin Regis, who attended GC Foster before she went off to Essex, But other than that, in terms of high school in Jamaica, that wasn't something they were dreaming of at then.
Well, maybe not as popular as it is now, but had high school students from in the Caribbean islands coming to school in Jamaica for
and I'm saying that in the context of, because it's now getting the sort of attention, it's sort of getting the attention now, I guess, because some of them are even competing in the Boys and Girls Championship, for example. Yeah, but before we move on, let's start off by giving us an idea of ISSA, what it's all about, so that people will have an idea of ISSA itself. They're hearing a lot about it. ISSA, Grace Kennedy, Boys and Girls Athletics Championship, for example. And as far as they're concerned, when they hear ISSA, they think about just that.
Yeah. All right. So as you mentioned earlier, Intersecondary School Sports Association, that's what the acronym means. We are an organization that is 114 years old. It is made up exclusively of principals of our public secondary schools in Jamaica. So it was started in 1910, I think, or 1909, with 4 principals, the principals of Jamaica College, Wolmer's, Calabar, and Monroe College. Those schools, as you know, where our history is coming from, we are heavily linked to the British system. So in those days, a lot of our high school principals were actually British expatriates, and our education system was generally modeled from the British system. So around about 1909, 1910, these principals were basically four of I think maybe a dozen high schools in Jamaica. They decided that it would be great if we had competition amongst our high schools then, like is done in Britain. And so they started the Intersecondary School Sports Association. And our ISSA's first organized competition, was track and field, followed by football. So that is where our history lies. We have been in existence for a while. And over those 100 and odd years, would have been able to build a legacy around track and field. So not all, but certainly a very high percentage of all the Olympians in track and field from Jamaica would have participated and started their track and field careers or participation in our Boys and Girls Championships. Over those 100 plus years, would have added cricket, volleyball, basketball, swimming, hockey, a few other sports that schools compete against each other at the ISSA level. So we organize over 20 competitions in 9 different sports.
Quite an institution, I should say. Unlike others, you're speaking about since for many generations.
Yes.
Many generations of, in particular for Jamaica, generations of Jamaicans being involved. So it becomes an actual institution in Jamaica, ISSA, probably older than probably a lot of other established organizations in Jamaica
Absolutely.
as well. Yeah. So, but in terms of your role as president, I mean, you're carrying quite a bit then. I mean, quite a bit. It's almost as if you're the president of the Jamaica Olympic Association.
At least a mini version. At least a mini version of it. Because yes, we as I've said, it's a multiple sport organization. So it's not just, for example, like the JC, the Cricket Association or the Football Association that focuses on one sport. We actually focus on all the competitive sports that our schools participate in. The good thing though is that our membership is, as I said, is made up of principals, and therefore when we organize our competitions, we have basically the highest decision maker within the schools being a part of our association. We are run by an executive. We have 16 principals that form the executive body of ISSA, and we have a secretariat where we have employees that run the office, and so there is support for the president. It's not a one-man band thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, quite. Rudian?
Yeah, most definitely. That's a very good standard of a sporting body in Jamaica for as we use it as grassroots or you know. But one question before I ask anything else. You said hockey. Some people might get confused, so let me make it clear. It's field hockey, right?
It's not ice hockey. It's not ice hockey.
No.
It's field hockey.
Field hockey. Yeah, no. I did want to ask that because I have seen so many sport in the Olympics, and I asked the question, why can we Caribbean have another sport, another event? Like why can other countries have another event like the field hockey and so forth? Because that's not even softball. Like, why can't we have another? When we look at the Olympic, we're seeing the swimming, little boxing, but it's always track and field. There is never anything else, So I always ask the question that it is time for us in the Caribbean to kind of divert into something else that would give others the opportunity to be an Olympian.
For Jamaica, we have had participation in other events. So we have won a cycling medal. I think in the 1980 Olympics or 84, we won a cycling medal. We have participated in other sports, including karate, including swimming, as you said before, with boxing. So we do participate in a number of other activities. And the current Olympic Association, Jamaica Olympic Association, has been making efforts to include as many sports as possible, to develop them and to have our youngsters participating in these sports. Many of them, though, because we are not able to offer them at the school level, the development process is a little bit slower. And so you will notice that our teams sometimes are made up of persons who are of Jamaican heritage living abroad.
Yeah. No, most definitely, and certainly because sometimes we as Caribbean exclude Jamaica because we said Jamaica is on their own. Well, let's talk about the rest of the islands. When can we do something? You look at the World Cup. Yes, Trinidad make it in, but Jamaica made it in. Trinidad make it in. What about the rest of the Caribbean islands? What about the rest of the? So we always kind of Jamaica is aside. What about the rest of us? How can we make difference? What can we do to make it better? What can we do? Because even during the pandemic, you guys still had track and field. You guys still had sports happening. Yeah. Other islands didn't have that. They just decided. You know what I'm saying? So yeah,
and I'm glad you mentioned that, Rudian, because that is what I wanted to ask Mr. Wellington regarding the pandemic and how challenging it was for ISSA to still go ahead and organize and to an extent a successful ISSA, particularly the ISSA Grace Kennedy Boys and Girls Athletics Championship.
Well, as I said, one of the benefits of being an organization that has been around for this long is that we have built up a certain level of credibility. And for us at ISSA, I think there's no doubt as to how much people believe in us. We do not get any funding at all from government. So we are a strict NGO, no funding at all from government, but we have corporate sponsors who support us tremendously. They believe in the product that we have. and they believe that we manage well. And so by extension, I think the government as well has a lot of faith in us. They know that they value the work that we do and the contribution we have made to youth development, not just in terms of actual participation in sports, but also their socialization. So I think throughout the pandemic, we were seen as a leader. For us, for track and field in particular, the Jamaica Amateur Athletics Association was very proactive in ensuring that track and field took place. And the nature of track and field, where there isn't any real need for persons to come in direct contact with each other, meant that it may have been a little bit easier to accept that persons could participate in track and field events. But because of all of those circumstances, I think that we were able to work with government, with the governing body, to ensure that our students remained engaged in track and field. I think the Boys and Girls Shops was probably the first global track and field meet of its type to actually be held during the pandemic. And that says a lot for us as Jamaicans, and certainly for us at ISSA and for the schools that were involved, that we were able to get it done and to lead the world where that was concerned. But it took a lot of effort and it took a lot of cooperation, and I must commend the persons who were involved, including the various government agencies, because as I said, nothing could have been done without government approval. But from our side, we think that it came down to the leadership from the J3s, as well as the credibility that as an organization we have within our society.
No, and if I may ask, that when you said you guys have no support from the government and financial.
Yeah.
And I try to sit back and I'm here thinking that I believe most of the government's body went to one of those schools who is a part of ISSA, so they know what it's like. Some of them probably get involved in playing the sport and not seeing it fit to say, yes, can we get a budget to support a body that is so successful and runs so well. And it's kind of surprising, because I'm pretty sure.
I think the truth is, though, for us, we have not been very stringent in terms of trying to acquire funding from the government, because we understand where government lies and the priorities, where the priorities are. I think the model that we have has been working for us. What we would love in terms of government support is actually in things like infrastructure, in terms of putting in infrastructure to allow our competitions to be held at better types of facilities and facilities that can benefit the entire country. So as an organization, we wouldn't necessarily say to the government, give us a couple $1 million of a year subvention. But what we would say to them is, maybe, listen, we need to have a multi-purpose facility in each parish or each county to allow for kids to be exposed on better playing, in better playing facilities. I think that is, in terms of monetary support, that is what we would love most of all, to see support coming from the government.
Okay, so it's all a matter by choice, rather, not that you don't really need the financial support, but
we need it, but we think we have a model that works. The corporate sponsorship, sponsorship that we get, we still have a long way to go in terms of sponsorship for some of our competitions. But as I said, for us, we think that government could support us. The best way they can support us is through infrastructure development. For example, if we talk about track and field, I think there are, outside of Kingston, there is right now, as we speak, there is no artificial running surface outside of Kingston. There's one in Montego Bay that has been in disrepair for over 5 years that we have not been able to use. So I think things like that are what we would love. There's only, outside of Kingston as well, there are no facilities where you can actually have competition during the nights, right? There are no, so things like that. I think that in terms of development of sports, I think that is where we would love to see the government focus some resources.
There is a lot has been on the whole issue of track and field, and I'm certain, as the principal of STETHS, that is also when it comes to whether it's STETHS, whether it's Caliber, KC, track and field. But Mr. Wellington, you do know also that when it comes to football, cricket, I think basketball, you know, folks, if you can just go on to the Facebook page, ISSA Jamaica, and you'll see, you know, well updated, you know, in terms of the various sporting disciplines as Mr. Wellington has been speaking about. So, Mr. Wellington, how challenging is it for someone like you and your organization to, you know, to keep that tab? I know you're speaking about the institution. I mean, it's 100+ years going, but the challenge in ensuring that whether it's football, whether it's cricket, whether it's basketball, whatever sporting discipline, they get the equal attention and treatment as probably track and field.
All right. So I'm sure you will understand if I say to you that it's a difficult challenge to ensure equality. George Orwell said there everybody's equal, but some are more equal than others. The truth is that it's hard, it's difficult to attain equality, but what we try to do is to ensure that all the sports are given some level of support or as much support as we can. So even though we may have a competition, for example, like netball that is not sponsored, or swimming that is not sponsored, or hockey that is not sponsored, we budget for those, and that is where it is important that we are as successful as possible with our track and field programs, with our football programs, which are really heavily sponsored. And those resources now are able to cover those competitions that are not sponsored. It is a model again that I think works well. We just over the last 2 weeks we have been entertaining a delegation from Trinidad, and you know we were trying to share ideas and to show them how we have been able to attain the level of successes that we have. And one of the things that was pointed out is that in Trinidad there are the different sporting competitions in high schools are organized by separate entities. So there's really no level of collaboration that allows for the give and take like we have at ISSA. So where, for example, there may be no sponsor for hockey or netball, we are still able to say we are going to have the competition because we had money that we got from football or from track and field that we are able to pump into these other sports. So it may be difficult for them to all be equal, but we try and provide equal opportunities for all.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's almost similar to, well, I say similar in terms of some of the U.S. colleges, for example, the
conference,
the resources they get from
carries in all the money.
Yeah, carries the money, you know, and it helps the others, you know, sporting discipline. Mm-hmm. There was an article in one of the papers in Jamaica last month, and it refers to, if I may just paraphrase that part of it, Kingston College, which is KC, Jamaica College, JC. Then they have St. Jago High, Calabar High, St. Catherine High, and Edwin Allen High have benefited in the past, and other schools have now joined the fray. And athletes from these schools have already made their marks in development meets. Mm-hmm. And there has been a discussion, you know. In fact, the headline was "Foreign Athletes Doing Well for Local Schools." Somehow I didn't see your school mentioned in that, Mr. Wellington. But let's talk a bit about the involvement, participation of athletes outside of Jamaica. I mentioned in the intro, you know, from way down as far down south as Guyana. We have Trinidad and Tobago, Grenada, St. Vincent, and the Grenadines. I noticed that they have an athlete or two from England, and then also from Africa, Uganda, Kenya, among others. Why you think schools are now, and high schools in Jamaica in particular, are now recruiting athletes outside of Jamaica? And is there any policy, anything that can prevent them from doing, or the policy allows them to recruit talent from outside of Jamaica, knowing that, I mean, Jamaica with so many athletes in particular, how possible is that?
All right, so before I answer your question directly, let me just make a few comments, right? I know You've mentioned St. Vincent and the Grenadines on quite a few occasions. I don't know if Coach Mike Olivier is on, but speaking from Caribbean perspective, we as a country, I think we have a history. We have a history of being a leader within the Caribbean. I don't think things have worked out the way we would want, generally from a political perspective, in terms of integration of the Caribbean. But the truth is that the Caribbean should really be regarded as one community for a number of reasons, and whether it's going to be economics or economics, commerce, business, whatever you want to call it, politics, sports. I think that based on our history, based on our physical space, I think that it's important that our leaders regard the Caribbean as one family. We have always had a history of persons within the Caribbean participating, coming to Jamaica and participating. I mentioned Coach Olivier because for us, we are one of the top schools in sports in Jamaica, including track and field. And our program at St. Elizabeth Technical High School, track and field program, can be a lot of our successes can be attributed to Coach Mike Olivier, who is a St. Vincent, who's a Vincentian. His work at STETHS during the 80s and 90s. And so we benefited at STETHS from his involvement. History will show that there have been a number of Caribbean athletes that have participated at champs and gone on to represent their country. I think one of the most noticeable one would be Sidani Mothersill of the Cayman Islands, who attended high school here and would have represented Cayman right throughout her high school career and went on as a senior athlete to represent the country. There have been others who may not have had the level of prominence like Sidani, but there certainly have been others. So bearing all of that history in mind, what has happened though over the last, I would say 5 or 6 years, is that as boys and girls champs become so much more of a competitive event, we have had schools who have made attempts to bring in athletes from outside of Jamaica, right? But we have equally and probably even more dominant has been the number of youngsters, number of parents, number of even government officials from within the Caribbean islands who have suggested that there needs to be a greater collaboration between Jamaica and these smaller islands that will help to develop their athletes. So what we have found is that a number of these athletes, when finishing secondary schools in the smaller islands, at age 16, they want to move on and possibly get into high school here as a way of acquiring a scholarship to get into college, whether here or in the US. And so we've had quite a flood of interest, not necessarily initiated from Jamaica's end. Yes, it has in some cases, but not in all cases. We have had this interest initiated from these Caribbean islands, and we have been able to facilitate these youngsters coming to school in Jamaica, participating for their schools in Jamaica, and then moving on to colleges abroad for the most part, but also some continuing to train here. Barbados, I think it was a silver medalist from the World Championship, young Shade Williams from Barbados. She actually trains with a Jamaican club here. And we have quite a few of them. I don't necessarily know all the names, but I think that what we have seen now is a greater contribution being made by Jamaica to the development of our young athletes in the Caribbean.
Yep. I think
in terms, I don't know. I think you also asked if there's anything prohibiting them from.
Yeah, but if there's a policy or anything like that, so.
Right. So there's no policy that hinders a student from outside of Jamaica attending school in Jamaica and participating in our competitions. We have some rules that are applicable to everyone, whether they are Jamaican or non-Jamaicans coming into school in Jamaica. So we don't have rules that single out any foreign nationals. So a student coming from, let us say, St. Lucia, right? For example, I think young Alfred, who is now I think she's at Texas, she came in and she participated
Alfred, yeah.
Without hindrance. What we have, though, is, as I said, the rules that apply right across the board. And one of the rules that I think would be most significant for persons wishing to come here is that if a child comes to Jamaica under age 16 and enrolls in our high school, then that child is able to participate immediately. However, if the child is 16 or over and comes into a high school in Jamaica, and it applies to even Jamaican kids moving from a Jamaican school to a Jamaican school. If you are 16 or over, then you either must sit out a year, meaning that you wait a year to become eligible, or you would have had to completed fifth form and gain the necessary CXC subjects to be eligible for sixth form to participate right away. We also have a quota system. We have a quota system which says that for students moving from a Jamaican school to a Jamaican school, there is a limit as to how many can participate for a particular school. So you can't be in let us say, school A in Jamaica, then you move to school B and participate if there are more than 3 of you moving from different schools coming to school B. And it also includes those who are coming from abroad.
Well,
it's Rudian, it's an institution, so we expect that, you know.
Do you suggest that other Caribbean islands look to expand on the high school in terms of what you are doing, in terms of expanding to the 6th year, or to a level like that? Like, I think that's that's the lack, because we always speak about Grenada because we are Grenadian. And when the kids finish at that age, 16, 17, they're already done. There is nothing else beyond for them, because we only have like one college, and then we have the university. The university is linked to to United States and so forth. So we can have the one college, but after that college don't even take part in the sporting body like you guys do. Yes, we talk about bigger countries. But yes, we talk about you guys are bigger, so the number is there, because we don't have the numbers as you do. We're dealing with maybe 40,000 students, probably, right? So that's not there. But do you like to, or would you suggest that in the education system for other small islands to expand on the high school?
Well, I think you pointed out to what the issues may be. We understand, and at ISSA, we would have had to deliberate on this particular matter as to should we accept these kids coming in to participate right away? Is this exploitation? Is this affecting our competition? Are we helping these kids coming from these smaller islands? And we would have recognized the challenge that these youngsters coming out of Caribbean, having completed high school in these Caribbean islands face, because, as you said, it's a smaller population, and their secondary cycle probably ends after year 5. And if they don't matriculate to get into college, or even if they do, because you finish your secondary education after year 5, it means that it's not compulsory for you to go back to school. There may be less opportunities for you to participate and develop. And so we understand, and that is where, that's why I started out by saying regional cooperation is important, and we need to regard ourselves as one community, because there are things that I can do for you and things that you can do for me that we need to work together to ensure that we benefit. And so in terms of whether or not these small islands should institute a 7-year program, it comes down to the things like the population size, the availability of resources, the culture of the country, and all of that. So I wouldn't just get up and say no, don't, or yes, do. Right? It depends. But from our end, I think that it's important that similar to how we look to the US for opportunities, and we want the US to provide or to be cooperative in terms of giving us those opportunities. I think that we have to look on our situation as a situation that we can use to provide opportunities for our neighbors.
Now let me go somewhere. So I'm crossing over and come back, because just as Jamaica is, Grenada is also is. We are under the British system in education. Do you see it as there should be a transition over to North American aspect as well? Because, and I only say that because if you have a star athlete, not only in track and field, but maybe also in soccer, because those are the two major ones you can get scholarship for. You can get the others, but major. At 16, they may not be able to go into a college in the United States at that level because they're not at that age. Because that's also the issue. And because we're under that British system, it kind of put us under that age. That age become not a problem for us in the Caribbean, because that's what we're under for many generations. But it's an issue for them moving on onto the university because of the talent. They might have to stay back and because of age, and not even on academics, but because of age. Because the age is always the issue, because you're 16 years old, you're a star athlete, you could compete with the university athletes, but because of your age, you cannot go to the college because you have to be the age of 18, maybe 17, but 18 and beyond to get on. So you see that there should be some sort of, education aspect with North America and the Caribbean, just as well as how we have the British system.
Yeah, I think for us, the level of maturity of a 16-year-old Caribbean child, I think is significantly different from a 16-year-old in North America, and certainly an 18 or 17-year-old in North America. So if we take out the issue of academic achievement at 16 or talent at 16 and just focus on the sociological part of the equation, I think that our kids at 16 would find it challenging to be enrolled in a North American university for the most part. There are always going to be exceptions, but for the most part. And so for us in Jamaica, our kids, when they are finished with our 7-year cycle, they are a lot more mature and a lot more prepared to handle being on their own in a very different society, and therefore being able to cope. But even us, we would have had our challenges, because if you follow Jamaica's track and field, you would recognize that there was a time when it was felt that our athletes go abroad and they don't accomplish what we expect of them. And therefore, that is why we ended up with the MVPs and the Racers Track Club starting in the late 1990s, early 2000s, and hence the Usain Bolts, the Shelley and Frasers, the Asafa Powells, and so on, being locally trained and locally groomed. So I think that there are a number of issues that you have to look at in determining what is going to be best for us as Caribbean islands and our youngsters.
No, and definitely you hit it right on the nose. You're solely right about that, because that's where dealing with the younger one, the maturity is, the way the lifestyle is for a 16-year-old out here is not the same for a 16-year-old in the Caribbean. Certainly not for us, the way we are raised, And
I think that is where the bridge that Jamaica provides for those kids is important, because again, the transition from St. Lucia or St. Vincent or Grenada to Jamaica is also it may be challenging, but not as challenging as moving to the US, but it's a little bit closer on the way to the type of society and the type of environment that you would be exposed to in North America.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, because one of the Hazel Buckles, formerly Regis, who attended school in Jamaica, said, I agree with the maturity level. It's so different. The transition is also rough at this age. But she's speaking specifically in the US, because she's a principal in the United States. So that transition she's speaking about is rough at that age. But as you said, it's challenging even for those folks who are non-Jamaicans, in the Jamaican system. Chenny Joseph, a former president of the Grenada Football Association, is saying Grenada can afford a second college or simply choose one each one school each five for sixth form, and Lincoln Deputy say enough respect to Jamaica. They have not been perfect, but they have contributed. And there's rather a close relationship between Jamaicans and Grenadians. Many regard Grenada, in many respects, especially Grenadians' love of reggae, as a little Jamaica. Well, yeah, and even some of those who try to speak as Jamaicans, right? We have a lot of Grenadians who try to speak as Jamaicans, especially in the entertainment field. But Mr. Wellington, so looking forward, do you think there could be, and you mentioned a delegation from Trinidad, for example, but do you think by extension, and by the way, I should have mentioned, I don't know how I forgot Mike Oliver, Mike has been a stalwart in Jamaican track and field, especially at, boys and girls championship, for many, many years, Recall when I attended Carimac, part of Mona, Mike was in Jamaica at that time.
Yes.
I get to know Mike from since then, and then after a while he moved back to St. Vincent. He's doing quite a bit in St. Vincent and the Grenadines in terms of track and field. But do you think there's a need for more collaboration between, probably, I don't know if other islands have you have your ISSA setup. I know in Grenada there's a principal association, but they deal specifically with the track and field. But in the case of ISSA, secondary school sports in general. But do you think there is need for some similarity like what you were doing with those folks in Trinidad, for example, where they can come and see for themselves and sort of like best practices to ensure that they have an idea, because it seems that everyone wants to have an idea too of the Jamaican model, So is ISSA prepared to have that sort of collaboration with some of the other islands?
Yes, certainly. We are actually sending down two of our school teams. Kingston College and Edwin Allen will be going down to Trinidad next week to participate in their secondary school relays on Thursday. Just yesterday, I spoke with representatives of CONCACAF, where one of the Caribbean islands wants to come to Jamaica to sit with ISSA for us to look at how school football is organized and how they, in that particular Caribbean country, can remodel their high school football program to benefit at the national level. So we are open to having all of these discussions. I think my predecessor, Dr. Walton Small, would have come down to St. Vincent a couple of years ago upon invitation from his counterpart in St. Vincent. So we are open to have that discussion. And again, as I said at the outset, I made sure that I started by saying that it is my belief that the Caribbean islands should be regarded as one community, and whatever we're doing, we should try and do it to ensure that we all benefit from whatever is being done as one community. I'm a cricket lover, so I understand the concept of regional integration, particularly through West Indies cricket and what we would have achieved as a cricketing body encompassing the entire English-speaking Caribbean. I think not enough credit is given to what cricket did for the Caribbean in the 60s, 70s, and 80s to get us to where we are now, where so many of us feel that we have a level of independence and autonomy. Cricket would have played a significant part in how we are viewed in the rest of the Commonwealth. So at ISSA, I think that my fellow colleagues, my colleague principals support the idea that whatever we can do to work together with the rest of our Caribbean counterparts, we will. There's a Principals Association of the Caribbean Principals Association that meets annually. So yes, UA is a regional entity, and that's educational. So yes, I think that we are open to having discussions and to providing whatever sort of help we can to get our counterparts to a level that they want to get to and that they can be proud of as individuals. It's not just about competition or us competing against each other, because our mandate, as much as we are very competitive, with the sporting competitions that we offer. Our mandate is really not to produce winners of trophies, but to provide an opportunity for our student athletes to be socialized in a manner that makes them world-class citizens generally, not just world-class athletes. And so whatever opportunity that is there for us to get them to interact with persons around and to be able to create networking opportunities and so on, as sportsmen, we want to provide that opportunity for them as well.
Yes. I just have a question. You talk about teams going down to Trinidad and compete and so forth. Do you guys open up for the idea, maybe not in track and field, maybe netball, cricket, football, for a Caribbean championship? Like the winner of the high school meet every high school champion and compete for Caribbean high school championship. You ever thought about that? Or
all right, so on a small scale, we in the past we have had something with Trinidad again, and this year we wanted to restart that. We were not able to simply because the under-17 World Cup qualifiers will start in another week, and the Trinidad teams that won in Trinidad, they had, I think, about 11 youngsters that were involved in the Trinidad national team, and we neither of us wanted to compete with a team that was not at full strength. But the concept, yes, is something that we have thought of and we've discussed. We have looked at those corporate entities that does business right across the Caribbean. So, for example, the telecoms company, the airlines not as strong as they used to be. Then we have other companies that have businesses right across the Caribbean, and we have thought about it, and we have actually, broached the idea of getting these corporate entities involved because they would benefit because they have a marketplace in these different Caribbean islands, and to get us together would be good for them as corporate citizens.
Mm-hmm.
So I foresee that as something happening in the not too distant future.
No, and that's very good because
Caribbean islands, but certainly
a few
of those that are most organized.
Yeah, right. And then most definitely, because one of the things that a lot of these athletes may never go to continue on, especially with netball and with football, they may not be in the national team, but at least because we still identify them as the amateur level, to never get to go on that world-class level or the international level. So I'm thinking, and I think if you have something like that, and some countries is involved, I think the level of competition or the organization of that will be on a better level, because now it's not going to be let us just have, it's going to be less. The winning team is get to move on to represent Grenada. I think the organization aspect about it will be much better, and you'll see the better competition even within that country for a better team to move on.
Yeah. In addition to that, it's adding to the point of Mr. Wellington in terms of considering it. We all one Caribbean, and trying to where politics are failed. I think sports winning, and you rightly said in terms of cricket in the 70s and 80s and 90s. It provided that platform for a united Caribbean. It's just that the politicians didn't take the cue, and here where we are still. Mr. Wellington, as principal of the St. Elizabeth Technical High School, let's look at some aspects regarding, and I want to just spend a few minutes on track and field in particular, because I know we into the season. And as a matter of fact, you were not part of the program last week because you hosted your invitational, your meet. And we seen probably week after week. Probably if you were not on the program, you might have been at a meet in Jamaica.
Yes, I should have been one in Clarendon now.
That's what I'm saying. So you see, every weekend, and that's the difference, as we were saying, because, and that's, I guess, that's why so many of our athletes in the Caribbean outside of Jamaica are basically attracted to the Jamaican model, because almost every weekend there is a meet in Jamaica, similarly to probably the United States, for example, where Indo meets, for example, at this time of the year. What can we look forward to? It may be early season, but what can we look forward to boys and girls champs, ISSA Grace Kennedy Boys and Girls Athletics Championship in 2023, where I think we will now be past the pandemic, so full blown. Okay, what can we look forward to?
Well, so 2023 will be the first time since 2019 that we are realistically expecting a full house inside the stadium. The last two champs would have had restrictions based on COVID. This year we expect to be able to accommodate a full stadium, and we suspect that that is going to be the case based on the number of inquiries that we have been getting from not just Jamaica but all over the globe in terms of dates and tickets and pricing and so on. In terms of performance, we certainly expect that we are going to see some high level quality performances. Jamaica just came out of the World Junior Championships in Colombia last year, where we got more medals than we have ever gotten at any global meet at any particular level, whether senior or junior. Some of those athletes are still in school, and we have lost a few who have left school earlier. I think the twins, the Clayton twins, as well as Brianna Liston. But we have quite a few members of those teams still in school. And then it's Jamaica, so you always have somebody coming. So you always have new stars being born at champs. And so we expect that this year it's going to be really, really special as persons get back to coming to champs. I know, for example, last year there were some persons who initially planned to be at champs because there was a vaccine mandate in place, and they felt that it would be safe because only persons who were vaccinated would be there. Then the policy changed and everybody was allowed in, and so some persons decided that, boy, I'm not going to come because of that. I think all of those persons are going to be back in the stadium this year. So we are really expecting our usual high standard, but I think it's going to be something of a celebration as well to see us back to full tilt.
That's quite enormous indeed. And obviously there's the Carifta Games, so the highlight obviously will be a sort of precursor to what Jamaica can offer
which is just a week after the Carifta Games. Is just a week after. Pen Relays is just a month after, so everybody will be in tip-top shape.
While you talk about that, this is the other thing I want. How feasible it is, and I say feasible because I tried to find that Jamaica tends to be able to participate in just about anything they invite them to, especially the high school. I'm certain if there's a high school meet in Africa and they invited the Jamaicans, that the schools will find, the resources or something to make some sort of appearance. Why it is so?
It speaks to the value. It speaks to the value that our society places on track and field. I think it simply comes down to that. It's not that schools have money, because I can tell you as a principal, we don't have the resources. The resources doesn't come to us, and we don't necessarily have these resources. But our people believe so much in the talent of our youngsters, and in particular in track and field, that they will support our youngsters when opportunities like these are on offer, and especially our alumni associations. So the past students, so for example, coming to Pen Relays is an expensive venture. The schools don't necessarily have the monies, but almost all of our schools have significant number of Jamaicans who live in the tri-state area and who look forward to coming to Philadelphia each end of April to see their school colors on show in the big bad USA, and therefore they provide the resources to ensure that it happens. And I think generally that is how our schools are able to afford participating in these meets.
Yeah, I think that says a lot, Rudy, and especially the diaspora, very important. And I know Owen Clare, for example, has been very significant in terms of organizing.
Yes.
We had Owen on our program, before, and very significant in organizing, the diaspora,
Certainly,
and getting the various alumni associations throughout the United States. But we know for a fact, there's no secret that there are more Jamaicans at Penn Relays than Americans,
and you have to recognize as well that where we are now, I think it would be fair to say that Jamaica's track and field is actually a global brand, and therefore it makes it a little bit easier for us to attract the support that is required for activities like those.
And going to a point that I know, Rudian, you spoke about on previous program, you tried to get our guests to speak about, in terms of the support and, like whether it's, and I've just mentioned, whether it's Nike, Puma, Adidas, for example, particularly as the shoemakers, how important you think for those sort of corporate sponsors to be on board for, especially a track and field in the Caribbean, because ultimately, if they become professional athletes, they will be aligned to one of these, whether it's a Puma, Adidas, Nike, for example. So how important do you think it is for them at this stage to be involved in the development aspect of track and field, in particular in the Caribbean, Jamaica included?
Significant, very important. And if we continue to look at Jamaica as a model, and you look at the support that we get from Puma, not just in terms of the national team, but Puma actually is a significant sponsor for boys and girls champs. They are also a significant sponsor for a number of our schools. So they provide gear, they provide running equipment and so on. And it has helped. So when you hear about the KCs and the JCs and the Calabars and the STETHS, right, the Woolmers, these are schools that get support from Puma. Sometimes I know that it's difficult for one company to support everything, but they have done extremely well in supporting our track and field program. Other shoe companies have come on board as well and have supported individual schools, and it makes a significant difference for them. We wish there were more, and there's still opportunities for not just those that are in existence to offer more, but other companies to come on board and support individual schools, because at the end of the day, I said it before, we're a global track and field brand, but you don't get to that level without development, and development really starts with our schools. And so for those corporate entities that want to be aligned to the Jamaican product, I think starting with support for our schools usually gives them a showing, and it ensures that brand continues to build, while those who support us will eventually reap the benefits of being associated with the development of our brand.
If I may just tweak on that and add on that, do you have a not necessarily fundraising, but a body who go out and try to find sponsorships
for ISSA?
For ISSA,
we actually do that. As president, the executive is charged with that responsibility. So that's our responsibility as a body. So we don't have an agent or anything like that that actually does that on our behalf. But we actually have to, because that's the only way we can stay afloat.
I mean, and for an example, out here in Toronto, where in the high school championship in Ontario, we have Nike. I'm part of the board, and we have Nike, and Nike sponsor the whole meet, and it's like a contract we have with them for X amount of years. So Nike, we always have Nike, and there's other companies who is waiting for Nike to make a mistake for them to jump in, because they see the benefit in it, because Nike can come out with so much, because what they do with some of their gears, they brand it. So it's a way of them, and they resell it. And a lot of this younger generation want to say, yes, I was a part of the cycle championship, so I have a t-shirt that marks, the brand and have the year. So it's something like that. They said if you reach out to them, they could make back that. Imagine every school has a brand with the name on it, and
it's a similar situation with us. I think the major difference, if you're looking at the different markets, so you look at Canada, Jamaica, Eastern Caribbean, the numbers make a significant difference. So what you can get in Canada simply because of what the number of eyes, the number of persons, the number of pockets that they can reach in Canada or Toronto is significantly more than we can offer in Jamaica. And it's a similar thing with what compare Jamaica with St. Vincent or with Antigua. The numbers make a difference. But we can all maximize what we have. And depending on how we sell it and what we have on offer, the opportunities are always there.
And I just have one question. I want to expand to an international level now. And from the exit of Usain Bolt, in not necessarily from track and field, but from competition, because his name is always going to be there. His name is never going to leave track and field. We have seen the expansion of the women program in terms of what women are doing for Jamaica, but we have seen a decrease on the men's side. In your view, what do you think is the reason for lack of seeing Jamaican men in a finals, most finals, in track and field on the world class level?
All right, so first of all, we want to remind ourselves that life generally and certainly sports is cyclical, right? So there's going to always be ups and downs. For Bolt would have last competed in what, 2016? Which I think it's 2016, 2016, which may appear to be a long time ago, but it's only 7 years ago, including basically 3 years of pandemic. I am confident that while we may not produce another Bolt for a time, because he is a once-in-a-generation athlete, right? I remember the first time I saw him, he competed as a 12-year-old in Montego Bay, and my kids at STETHS came back. They competed against him, and it was all about this tall boy from William Nip. And I remember myself and about 4 other teachers. I think that was the Tuesday, and they were going to compete on the finals on the Thursday. And I remember about 5 of us drove down to Montego Bay just to see this boy that everybody was talking about. So he's a once-in-a-generation talent, and we may not produce another one like him for another 30 years or so. But when I look at what is on show in what is available in Jamaica, I see probably about 7 or 8 sprinters between ages 18 and 21 that I suspect in another 3 years, we may not, I think we will always remember Usain Bolt, but we won't probably have the complaints or we won't be able to make the observation that you just made. And I think I'm very confident that the vast majority of this group that is coming through now, these 19, 20, 21-year-olds, I'm confident that in another 3 years, we are going to see Jamaica's men's track and field being a dominant force as well. Broadbell, for example, I think Broadbell is only 21. And as I said, there are quite a few sprinters, 100, 200 sprint hurdlers at the younger, at that age group where they are, I think, poised for international stardom.
Well, I think... No, hold on, Rudy. Before you go, before you go with the last question, I was just saying, what we can do too is boys and girls champs will give us an idea of what Mr. Wellington is speaking about in terms of the talents, you know.
You have a youngster who ran 10.02 at the world champs, who is still in school, in high school. Right? And there are a couple other youngsters. He's not certain to win. So last year, for example, we were at champs and we were saying the Clayton twin is a world champion and she is not certain to win her event at champs, and she's a world champion. And I think similarly, this young man, a 10.02 world silver medalist, and he is not guaranteed to win a gold medal at champs.
The champs. Wow. Jeez. So you see that.
Question. We're going to exclude the education aspect about it. Do you see a big benefit of athletes leaving Jamaica and go to the United States and continue in their career, in terms of you see how they leave and then you go there and you say, okay, what's happening? 2 years later, they're not to that level. Do you see, is there a benefit in your point of view? Should they, I don't want to say they shouldn't go, you know, because it's more than just the sport itself, you know, because like I said, they can go and be whatever they wish to be, that they probably could not happen in Jamaica. Not saying they couldn't. But how do you see that transition, or you see there's a benefit, or they should, based on the program that in Jamaica, they should stay in Jamaica or continue on?
Right. And before you answer, Mr. Wellington, because I had a question similar to that, so probably if I can just integrate it as part of that in terms of ISSA, because most times we talk about, ISSA, we talk about the championship, we talk about sports, but as you indicated in the starting, it has to do a lot about producing a balanced individual, sports, education, etc., way of life and things like that. So just tying in with what Rudy is saying, how important it is for ISSA to ensure that we continue to produce balanced student athletes.
All right, so let me start with your question. I think that it's extremely important that the balance is created. For us at ISSA, we are adamant that is the case. So, for example, we have rules that prohibit students from participating if their attendance in school is below a minimum standard, if they're average, if they are not able to provide evidence of their academic, I wouldn't say prowess, because we don't necessarily believe that only quote unquote bright students should participate. But we have a particular standard that we have set to say that students must get to the standard to at least assure us that they are attending school, they are participating, and they are making an effort to do schoolwork. So that is an extremely important part of our mandate as principals. So, and why we do that? Obviously, we have thousands of kids leaving school each year. Only a small percentage of them will go on to professional sport, whichever sport it is. Only a small percentage will actually be able to earn from their involvement in sports. And so we have to ensure that as best as possible, our kids are exposed to every opportunity across whatever areas of involvement that are available at the school. And that that will probably help me to answer the question that Rudy asked. Should student athletes automatically go to college abroad, or automatically stay in Jamaica if they intend to become professional sportsmen or women? I don't think that there's a yes or no answer for that question. That that determination should be made based on individual circumstances. Right? So there are differences in pathways that a student may take to get to the same place that another person is going to take. And if for example, in the Jamaican context, the opportunity to study and participate in professional development in terms of sport is very, very, very restricted, because we don't have as much resources as a college in the US has, right? And in our situation, many of our athletes who choose to stay here have to be supported by the clubs that they represent. And if they go directly into college, usually it's a challenge for them to cross over into professional sport. On the other hand, those who go abroad, there is sometimes the complaint that the focus is usually too heavily placed on representing that institution, and there isn't enough consideration given to the gradual development of the athlete into an elite professional. And so there may be challenges that student athlete faces. But then there's the opportunity of getting your degrees and moving on. And so each person will have to determine what they think is the best circumstances that will fit them to decide whether they go abroad directly to college, stay here and go to college, stay here and become a professional immediately, or transition into the US and find a club into the US. All of these, I think, as I said, is dependent on the individual circumstance.
Okay, then. So as we get ready to wrap up, just want to squeeze in a final question from someone there. From Roger Duncan. Well, Roger is a banker who supports primary school sports, I should say, particularly track and field. Question for Mr. Wellington. What would you say are 3 major reasons that result in Jamaican secondary school boys and girls being highly competitive at track and field?
All right, so obviously there is the natural inclination of Jamaicans to be very competitive by nature. We are persons who are very competitive, high adrenaline. So if you listen to our music and our dances and everything, you will recognize the competitive nature of Jamaicans. But another significant thing is that we have a culture of track and field involvement for our kids from an early age. So right now in Jamaica, there are track and field meets for basic school children. A basic school child is a child between the age of 3 years old and 5 years old. Right? So in Jamaica, your child in school at age 4 and 5 could actually be involved in competitive track and field. Right? And it starts there and it goes right up through the primary school system and into high school. So the culture is there as well. And then obviously the opportunities that have been provided for our track and field stars in the past is an incentive for a young boy or girl to understand that if he or she has a particular talent that he or she works hard at and is able to produce great results, then there are a lot of opportunities available. Even if they don't go on to being professional, there's the opportunity to travel the world competing and representing Jamaica as a junior. And if they move on, then the economic benefits that may come their way is also an incentive. So I think those would be three good reasons why we see our Jamaicans being this competitive.
Thank you very much, Roger. There may be more, but you asked for 3. He gave you 3, you know. But quite a bit there, Mr. Wellington. I want to thank you because we learned quite a bit. I mean, especially that last one there, you know, with the kids at a very young age. Because the question will always be asked: why are Jamaicans so competitive in whatever they do, whatever sports, you know? Whether it's cricket, whether it's football, you will find a Jamaican competitive, even bobsleigh, you know, just name it. Just name the sports. Netball, you know, the Jamaicans are there, you know. As we say football, for example, you know, the Jamaicans are top in the Caribbean. Netball, they're top in the world, among the top 4 in the world, you know, and things like that. Track and field, they're there, you know, and things like that. So very competitive indeed. I want to thank you.
Even bobsleigh.
Yeah, that was it, bobsleigh, you know. And I know there are a couple of other winter sports that the Jamaicans are getting involved in, you know. But I really want to thank you because I think it was a learning lesson for quite a bit, you know, a few of us. And a big takeaway for me is the need for more collaboration. I'm glad to see Trinidad and Tobago, for example. And I will probably ask that the folks in Grenada, for example, Brother Dominic Jeremiah, should send an invitation to Mr. Wellington and his crew to visit Grenada for their intercall championships and, you know, see what it's being done and what can be suggested. You know, I'm certain that they will learn quite a bit, you know. You can probably pass on some things to them, you know, and things like that. So, but I really want to thank you, Mr. Wellington, a bit of fresh air, I should say, in terms of giving us that perspective for as president of ISSA Jamaica. And I'm looking forward to the Boys and Girls Championships. And so, I know a lot of our viewers, they, you know, just as how they look at probably World Championships, for example, they look forward to Boys and Girls Athletics Championship. And particularly because we, like in Grenada, for example, we do have a lot of athletes now who are competing there. In fact, we have at least 2 or 3 Grenadians who won medals at last Boys and Girls Championship, you know, and there are more. So certainly they will be looking forward to that as well.
Yeah, man, thanks very much for having me. It was a pleasure being with you. And thank you very much.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you very much, Mr. Wellington.
All right, boss. Good.
Thanks, man.
All right, then. Thanks. Yep. So there it is. We had Mr. Wellington with us, Rudian, quite a bit, you know.
Most definitely, and it's good for us to kind of get an understanding of the success and
Mm-hmm.
success is not only in the academic, not only in the sporting aspect, but success in how they get it done, which is very important because success only comes based on if you have everything in place. Not as
Yeah.
perfect, but you have some things in place. Yeah.
And I like the collaborative effort because, as
Yeah.
for example, they could have just say, you know, hey, what we're doing here is what we're doing, and
What you're
that's
doing,
it.
yeah.
You know,
And it's
you
and
know,
just how he talks about how collaborating with Trinidad, how every different sport have their own body. You know, they just have one body, and I think it should be when you're dealing with schools, it just should be one body.
yeah, you know,
It should be. Yeah.
because in the Grenada context, for example, the principal association, they deal specifically with track and field.
Track and field.
But
Yeah.
when it comes to the other sporting disciplines, football organized by the ministry,
Yeah.
the netball by the ministry, you know, things like that. So, but and that's something we have been calling for in terms of the organizing of sports, secondary school sports in Grenada, to be organized at
one,
you know,
yeah.
have one body organizing
One body.
it. And as he rightly said, you know, they are responsible for the sponsorship aspect of ISSA. So they seek the sponsorship, you know, and they make it into a brand, you know. Secondary
Yeah.
school
Yeah.
sports in Grenada and other Caribbean countries should be a brand as well, you know. And I think that's the model the Trinidadians are trying to get into, you know, because as he said, so many different entities doing different things in Trinidad
Different
and
things.
Tobago, for example, that it becomes a bit confusing, you know. Probably you might have Puma doing this and you have Adidas on this side, you know, these sort of things. In the case of them in Jamaica, you know, I think Puma is the main sponsor and they support most of the schools, brand them. They're a sponsor of the Boys and Girls Championship, for example. The other thing is that the track and field, like as we know in North America, the football, well, the American football, their football program supports, you know, all the other sporting programs, most of the other sporting programs in the colleges. In Jamaica,
Yeah.
is it athletics that pushing the other sports? They don't have a sponsor for netball, but because of what they're receiving from athletics, they can support the netball and, you know, other sporting disciplines. Yeah. Yeah, quite a lot. Thank you, Hazel and Link and Depredine and Roger and company. Torres saying a culture of success and winning generates pride and further success and winning. That's Jamaica. Happens in PAN and other endeavors. Used to happen with West Indies cricket, as
Cricket. Yeah.
he said, back in the 70s and 80s and 90s. You know, cricket was that. You know, it brought that sort of pride and support and regional integration. At that time, you didn't know who was Barbadian or Jamaican or this or that.
I know, yeah. Just
we just knew them as West Indians,
one.
you know,
Yeah.
West Indians. So much has happened, but I would hope that the authorities, in particular Grenada, will be able to take advantage of, just as how Trinidad and Tobago taken advantage, and probably St. Vincent can do likewise. The other countries can do likewise.
Yeah, the other countries can take advantage. Yeah,
we know a lot of the competitive sports at that age level from the school, secondary schools in particular. You know, secondary schools. You know, competitive sports in Jamaica is at the secondary school level. Whether it's bigger than even the club sports, for example. You know, how many people know about racers and MVP, etc., etc. Everybody knows about whether it's Calabar, you know, KC, JC, you know, and this sort of things, you know, Edwin Allen and company and things like that. So even if you didn't go to school in Jamaica, but you have, and you follow in track and field, once you follow in track and field, you know about these schools and some of the athletes, you know, and things like that. So yeah, Rudian, well, it's a pleasure. Just to let you know that it's a traveling date for me come next Saturday. Off to this Super Bowl. Not as a spectator. Not as a spectator. I've actually been deployed there, so I'll be at work.
Oh, really? Okay.
I'll be at work. yeah, so I'm traveling next weekend, so we'll be back on air the following weekend, you know, and things like that. So yeah, and it's right time for us to
Who is your team? I mean,
well,
my team is not there, but I mean, in the two team that is there, who you
I was about to say that too, you know. I don't have a horse in the race, but I will try to support, well, and for reasons, the Eagles, even
fly, Eagle fly.
Well, yeah, well, closer to home, that's one, and then we have I want to throw some support to our Grenadian brother, Zach Pascal, the number 3. His parents are actually Grenadians, and you know, I want to throw some support at his way. So I'll support the Eagles. I know when it comes to New York, the Eagles are, you know, bitter enemies, you know, bitter enemies, you know, and things like that. So because
I'm a Cowboy, so
okay. So there's big debate going on whether if the Eagles win, whether they should light up the you know how they normally do in New York, you know, light up the Empire State with the colors of the Eagles, blah blah blah, and you know, all the back and thing like that. So yeah, but other than that, I'm trying to throw some support to the Eagles way. I'll be there in Phoenix come next weekend.
Next weekend.
Yeah. So travel date will be Saturday for me.
Be safe out there. It's gonna be the hardest spot in the United States next week.
Next weekend.
You know, security is on the top notch, you know. So just enjoy and
well, I'll be part of the
security detail.
Part of the process. Yeah. Thanks very much, Rudian.
No problem again. Have a good one, man.
We'll talk soon. All the best. Okay. Yeah, folks. So there you had it from Rudian in Toronto, Canada, giving us this bit as well as we had previously the president of ISSA Jamaica, Mr. Keith Wellington, live from Santa Cruz in St. Elizabeth, Jamaica, speaking all about the Intersecondary School Sports Association in Jamaica. We're still trying to get someone from Grenada in particular to speak about intercall championships. We have been, since last December, we have been trying to make the contacts, and we have made contacts, but we are trying to get them on to talk a bit about it. I was hoping to, you know, keep holding back until I get through with Grenada, but we'll keep trying. Hopefully, we'll have probably St. Vincent and then the Bahamas. These are some of the folks we, you know, made contact with, trying to get out of the program, speak about not just track and field, but school sports in particular in those various islands. Still trying to get to Grenada, but hopefully. Yeah. Thanks very much, Tracy. Yes, I will. I will. You know, it's part of the nature. And to you, Gordon Boney, always a pleasure being on. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure, folks. A very, very cold weekend in New York in particular, freezing, you know. If you're on the outside, you have to be on the outside. Be careful. I was there earlier this morning, and I'm telling you, it was brutal. You know, brutal, I'm telling you. I don't think the weatherman is giving us the true picture of that. Brutal. Feels like at one point it felt as -6. It was showing back. It was showing -6, yeah. And then the wind and all of that. Ooh, yeah. But we hope to get a warm up later on, and then probably Sunday, Monday should be on the warmer side. But for now, it's that brutal. Thank you very much, folks. A pleasure being with you. Hope you have a wonderful weekend. Don't forget, do join us the following weekend. Next weekend, we on leave for the time, and so that's the 11th. So the 18th, we'll be back on air with another live program. Until then, do enjoy the rest of the weekend and what's left on time we see each other again in another week's time. Thank you very much.